Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to, as always, an impromptu video. I hope you're all doing well. I hope everybody's had a nice, pleasant weekend, nice and serene, not too stressful. I've been doing okay, thank you. Very, very busy week. Lots going on. Very time-consuming things. I feel I'm saying that quite often. When I introduce the videos nowadays, but it appears to be the way of my life, and not just mine. It appears also with many others at the moment that time seems to be whizzing by, and there aren't enough hours in the day. But we could sit here and complain all day long about it. It's not going to change anything. We've just got to crack on. So in that spirit, I'll try and keep this video a little bit short so that I can also get it on Facebook, because you're limited to 15 minutes. How you've all been doing with all the distractions? I've noticed there's been a lot of noise going on all around for all sorts of reasons. Things like hurricanes in America, and goodness knows what else going down here in the UK. Stuff going on in the Middle East as usual. Just constant flooding of news in inverted commas to keep people preoccupied and distracted from, as far as I'm concerned, way more important issues that are actually going to affect us, and that not too far in the future. I'll go into that in more detail in a bit, but while I'm here, I'll just keep it local for a second. A couple of brief announcements. First of all, there will be, as always, a Flat Earth social on. I've written this down because otherwise I'll forget. Basically, the next one will be on the 29th of October at the Bridge House Hotel in Ferndown. I'm not 100% sure who's going to be presenting or talking that evening, so I will get back to you with an update once I know, but definitely there will be a meetup, of course, and I shall be attending as well. Then obviously in November, on the Tuesday the 26th, because it's always the last Tuesday of the month, that will be the final one of the year. We don't do one over the Christmas period, so November is normally the one that caps the year. Usual thing, Tuesday the 26th at 7 o'clock kickoff PM, and for that one I'll be continuing with a bit of talking, following on from my last one that seemed to have gone down quite well. I got some very positive feedback from it, where I'll just be sort of trying to interact a little bit with the audience, and we'll be touching on all sorts of topics, because, like I keep saying, it is all connected. And once you get a handle on how the lies kind of work, then it all becomes very clear and obvious pretty quickly. So I thought I would just announce that. Also, while I'm talking about local stuff, quite interesting, I saw something regarding Bournemouth, my hometown, on the south coast of England, that is in desperate need of redevelopment, right? There's a lot of lovely old buildings in the town centre, and a lot of them are lying there derelict. Nothing happening to them. In fact, as far as I'm concerned, even certain vital shops have been closed recently and stuff like that. Now, the reasons for that, I've often mentioned, it's the push to get everybody doing things online, basically. So things like bank branches closing down, and things like DIY shops and that sort of stuff. Yes, you'll have them, but they're on the edge of town and you have to have a car to get there. And they're all consolidated in one area, where you'll have, I don't know, a shop for that stuff for your house there, and right next to it will be a shop for this and a shop for that. But it's all concentrated in one little spot. It's called Little down here in Bournemouth, but every town tends to have these sort of hubs, if you like. Just like what they're doing with the bank branches, they're going to turn them all into, well, they're going to close all the separate branches of all the different banks, and then you will have singular hubs where there'll be a list of banks on the door, And if you are part of one of those banks, if you're an account holder of one of those banks, then you can access that hub. For me, it really just reveals that all banks are all one and the same, basically. But that's what will happen. And according to local media sources, there is a bit of redevelopment planned in Bournemouth, and there are 7 specifically objects that are going to be changed, revamped, and then used in a positive manner. And I looked at them, and of course, not one of them is retail at all. They are all, well, apart from flats for students, the others are all restaurants or restaurant type places. There's one cafe that will be open, but there's a couple of high-end restaurants, in fact, that are planned, that sort of thing. So again, it's a very niche kind of thing that's being redeveloped for the town centre, but nothing really to reintroduce a bit of atmosphere and vibe into a town centre that's severely lacking it. So I just thought that was interesting to sort of mention. Restaurant, oh yes, and a gym, of course, as well, because we must all rush to the gym to stay fit. So it just goes to show, doesn't it, that big noise around redevelopments, and then when you look closely as to what actually is being placed there, it's not really something that's for everyone, because I know loads of people who definitely don't go to a gym, and I definitely know loads of people who can't afford a 5-course meal in a high-end restaurant. There's also a tapas bar as well that's being opened. But there you have it. So that's about it. So not really big stuff to rejuvenate a town or make it attractive for people to get out the houses and hang out in town on a Saturday like we used to when I was younger, certainly going back a few years. But Saturday afternoon, you'd always be in town. Going shopping, going for a drink maybe, meeting up with friends, whatever, that sort of stuff, but there'd always be things to do. Those days, it appears, are over. Yeah, but anyway, getting back to the distractions that I mentioned earlier, this is something of a more serious note, and that is that I'd been following now for a little while something that can be found on the gov.uk website. It's all official. So anything I'm bringing to you now is basically being relayed from official sources. And that is that since the 4th of September, there has been discussed something called a Water Special Measures Bill in the House of Lords. That might sound like a totally foreign language to a lot of people. Basically, the system that we have here in the UK is that if you want to somehow introduce legislation by way of, new laws and stuff like that, it has to be discussed first, and it goes through filter mechanisms. And we have what's called the House of Commons, which is where all the politicians sit and debate. And you have something called the House of Lords, which is where the ex-politicians, if you like, sit. So they're sort of regarded as the filter mechanism, the wiser aspect of the political landscape, if you like, right? Of course, it's all just for formality's sake, because at the end of the day, agendas will be pushed through no matter what, right? But it all has to have, or appear to have, its due process. So in this country, that's how those things are done. It's very similar in other countries like the States and Germany. They have similar kind of models. They're just called slightly different, but at the end of the day, it's a similar sort of thing. And at the moment, the discussion around these special measures bill regarding water is in the early stages in the House of Lords, which is the upper house. It's actually the highest court in the United Kingdom as well. Once that's been discussed and blah, 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 blah there, then it gets sent to the Houses, or the House of Commons. That's the house, the chambers with the green leather seats. And they then debate, discuss, blah, 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 until it then gets passed to a third section. And that's basically what this is all called, the bill passage. And eventually, I'm just looking at my notes here, because I've written it all over the place a little bit, but eventually what happens then, it retains, or it gets what they call a royal assent, which again is a pure formality. It gets signed off by the reigning monarch of the country, and that's that. And then it gets turned from a bill into a law by way of an act, and then you have it written, set in stone, if you like, and that's it. And then the authorities can then have something that they can legally work with, rather than it being regulations. It is then legislation, right? That was the whole kerfuffle in the whole COVID times, that law enforcement or departments were trying to enforce stuff that wasn't law, basically. And that's why you still have ongoing cases right now that are still unresolved. But I won't go into that one right now. So there you go. So I find that actually quite concerning that there's even a discussion around water, to be absolutely honest with you. But do check that up. If it's here in the UK, that sort of conversation, then it will be like this elsewhere as well. And just to read the description, it's a bill to make provision about the regulation, governance, and special administration of water companies. Right? It's basically to further control the flow of water. That's basically what it is. You can use all sorts of fancy wording for it, but at the end of the day, it's controlling powers over that. I find it unbelievable. I'll give you a little example as well, just to round off this video, because we're approaching 15 minutes. But when I, a few months ago, wanted to square up a water bill that I have two bills, one from a company called South West Water, who are local, and one from a company called Wessex Water. One deals with your water usage, the other one with your sewage. And one of the things that the lady asked me on the phone when I was sorting it out with her on the phone, she asked me if I would like my name placed on a list whereby if ever there's emergency measures kicking in for whatever reason, I would like water delivered to my door, bottled water, whether that would be something that I'd like. I said yes, of course, because for obvious reasons, but afterwards I just thought to myself, what are we even talking about there? What are we talking about emergency measures for water for? We are an island, I've said this before, surrounded by water. In fact, the earth, according to what we've been taught at school, consists of over 70% water. So why is the topic of water even a conversation point? Right? And I personally, again, it's one of these topics where I don't understand why people aren't twigging and clicking onto it and going, there's something not right there. And it should make people anxious, and it should make people wary and wake them up, basically, because that's not good news when they start discussing stuff that is vital for your life, basically, right? It's one thing to be short of money. It's a different ball game to be short of water, and if that is what's being discussed right now, a little bit under the radar, because the news headlines are packed with other stuff, right, at the moment. They can discuss it and amend things and bring acts, force bills through and change them into laws and all that sort of stuff without people even noticing. And then before you know it, you've got a whole load of stuff set in stone you can't do anything about because it's already been rubber stamped, signed off, and done. And that's where we're at here. So I would urge you all, depending on what country you are, to take a little closer look at your governmental websites and see if there's anything being discussed in your parliaments. Not that you can do anything about it, and like I say, it's all a formality process, but nevertheless, the fact that it is openly being discussed, slightly under the radar, but it is being discussed, says a lot for where we're heading, right? And all that under the false auspices of global warming that absolutely is not a thing. It's total nonsense. And we have the numbers to totally and utterly debunk that, especially bearing in mind Earth is supposed to be gazillions of years old, and yet we only have records going back decades. So that's a bit of a strange sample to be suggesting that there's anything cooking. But like I say, I digress. Something worth keeping an eye on, because I think that's way more important than all the other mumbo jumbo that we're being fed with at the moment. And as usual, it's the magic trick. Look over here while we do this over there. Anyway, on that note, I bid you all farewell. I'll see you all soon. Some of you sooner. Take it easy. Bye for now.